When you hear of the Holocaust, you think of the concentration and the death camps, where more than 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazis. But historians estimate that more than 30,000 Jews survived by hiding in the woods in Eastern Europe. Tonight, we look at the story of one man who did just that and can never forget what happened.
The Germans were, really just trying to catch and, people try to kill as many people as they could in the forest.
Harry Schneider was just 2 years old when Nazi soldiers invaded his native Poland. Days later, his family fled from their hometown of Lmaz toward Russia, and his life was never the same.
Well, my grandmother was just too old to travel by that time, so one of the uncles stayed with her, so they didn't want to leave. Obviously, we found out later they were all massacred.
The Nazis murdered all of the Jews who remained in Schneider's hometown. Young Harry could easily have been one of them. Instead, his family spent the next 2 years on the run, hiding and foraging in the forest.
People were actually running all over the place. I mean, from time to time, there were groups of people. I don't know, maybe sometimes there were 6 of us, sometimes there were 10 of us, sometimes there was 12. And everybody was trying to find a way to go somewhere.
The family hid in the woods for months, surviving on whatever they could. They lived in huts, tents, or whatever they could prop up. But even harder than finding somewhere to live was finding food.
With my cousin Bear, we went out many times into the farms and tried to borrow some food. A lot of times we dug up potatoes. There were raw potatoes that we had no trouble. We didn't have to worry about. We didn't have time to cook. We just ate them. We just ate them raw.
Sometimes they almost paid for those potatoes with their lives.
Farmers came out with their shotguns and they were shooting at us. But we had no choice. We still kept on going because you had to survive.
Finally, Harry's family found refuge with his uncle in a remote part of Russia.
8 people, 10 people, we all lived in the same house for something like I don't know, maybe 6 months.
As the Germans advanced, Schneider's family fled further, deep into Russia. They rode on trains and were bombed by the German Air Force.
We had to, as they were coming, we had to jump off the trains. I couldn't forget is when you're close to being killed. You start, you remember what happens.
Eventually, they ended up in the Ural Mountains, where the bitter cold pushed the family to its breaking point.
During the night, we tried to burn and tried to sleep as close as we could next to the stove.
But Schneider was lucky. He survived the war, then spent a few years in displaced persons camps in Austria.
I was probably about 11 years old. Also in the same DP camps, and it's showing my picture in this barracks.
He was even reunited with his father, who he had thought had been killed.
My father, in one of the battles on the front, that he was, I guess he must have been hit by a bullet or whatever it is, and he was laying. So this individual told us that he thinks that my father is dead. Actually, he still had a bullet in his head, which they couldn't remove because it was close to the brain.
Finally, in 1951, Schneider's family was able to enter America through Ellis Island. Now a multi-million-dollar businessman and enjoying the life of a retiree in Florida, Schneider continues to grapple with his past.
I've always had a problem trying to understand, and I still have arguments with God as to why it happened.
This cement porch here, built by Harry Schneider's father with his bare hands. The family moved here to Washington, Pennsylvania after the war, and were put up in this house by the Jewish community here. Without that Jewish community, I wouldn't be here, because Harry Schneider is my grandfather. He kept it all a secret from his children for decades.
I was probably in my early 20s. He never talked about it when I was a young kid or when I was a teenager.
He just wanted to put the trauma of his past behind him.
When I was a child or whatever, it was almost as if it didn't happen or that he wasn't involved in it.
I didn't talk about it being a survivor. What am I going to do? I said, hey guys, I'm a survivor. What am I going to do? Tell everyone I'm a survivor. If they ask me, I'll tell them. It's a great honor to be a survivor. I guess it is.
For Maryland Newsline, Josh Rogers.